Hello children, so let's begin section 2. Can we change this? Before we begin the lesson, let's think something thought provoking. Do we treat people differently based on their caste, creed, or skin color? Have you experienced or witnessed discrimination of any kind? So in this chapter, here are some experiences of a young girl who has been victim of untouchability. Okay, so here she has shared her three experiences. Okay, so these three experiences are the part of her own autobiography. So this chapter we are going to study in two parts. Okay, first two stories, then last story, and then the question answers. Okay, so let's move ahead. Here she says, when I was studying in class 3, I hadn't yet heard people speak openly of untouchability, but I had already seen, felt, experienced, and been humiliated by what it is. Though people were not talking, but she has just experienced, she has just felt it. Okay, so what is humiliation? Humiliation is when you're facing disgrace. I was walking home from school one day, an old bag hanging from my shoulder. I crossed the street of the Palas and came to my street, the street of Parayas. So, two streets. Palas were the street of rich people, and Parayas was the street of poor people. Okay, we can also say the people, those who were not of upper class. In a corner, a threshing floor had been set up. Threshing, everybody knows, it is a process to separate grains from the straws. So, in a corner, a threshing floor had been set up, and the Niker here is landlord. The Niker watched the proceedings seated on a piece of sacking spread over a stone ledge. So, Niker was just sitting and watching the process. Our people were hard at work, driving cattle in pairs round and round to tread out the grain from the straw. So she says here, her people means the people, those who belong to her caste. They were very good at hard work. The animals were muzzled so that they won't help themselves to the straws. I stood for a while there watching the fun. She found it fun because the animals were muzzled, their mouths were kept covered so that they would not be able to eat any straw or the grain. Just then, an older of our street came along from the direction of the bazaar holding a parcel. When she was standing and noticing all this, she saw that one of the elders from her own caste, he was coming from the direction of bazaar. Bazaar is market. So the manner in which he was walking made me want to double up. So double up here is means when she wanted to laugh loudly. I wanted to shriek, scream with laughter at the sight of such a big man carrying a small parcel in that fashion. He was just holding it just like string. I guessed there was something like vadai or green banana bhaji in the packet because the wrapping paper was stained with oil. So she just guessed because of the wrapping paper's oil that must be something edible item like vadai. He was holding out the packet by its string without really touching any part of the parcel itself. So he was just, you can see in the picture in your book, okay, he was just holding holding with a string, keeping away from his own body. So I stood there, she says, I stood there thinking to myself, if he holds it like that, won't the package come undone and the vadais fall out? So she was thinking, if he's holding the packet like that, maybe vadais will fall and they would be of no use. The elder went straight up to the landlord, bowed low, and extended the packet towards him, cupping the hands that held the string with his other hand. See, Naikar opened the parcel and began to eat the vadai. So he handed over the parcel to Naikar, and then Naikar started eating his vadai. So she noticed all this and then she went to her home. After I had watched all this, I went to home. My elder brother was there. I told him the story in all its comic detail. So because she enjoyed this incident, so she was just enjoying and telling the same to her brother. I fell about with laughter at the memory of a big man and an elder at that, making such a game out of carrying the parcel. So she thought that maybe he was just at his game. That's why she was making fun of him. But Annan is a Kannada word for, it's Kannada, right? Let me see. Don't, sorry, it's a Tamil word. Okay, so Annan is a Tamil word for big brother. So, but Annan was not amused. So her big brother was not happy at this. Why? Let's see. Annan told me the man wasn't being funny when he carried the package like that. He said everybody believed that Naikar were upper caste and therefore must not touch anything touched by pariahs. So now she understood, she got to know the reality that why that elder one was not carrying the parcel properly. So now she knows that Naikars were the upper caste people and they do not touch anything touched by the pariahs. Why, if they did, they would be polluted. If they would touch the things touched by pariahs, they would be polluted too. That's why he had to carry the package by its string, and that is why that man was carrying the package by its string. When I heard this, I didn't want to laugh anymore and I felt terribly sad. How could they believe that it was disgusting if a pariah held that package in his hands, even though the vadai had been first wrapped in a banana leaf and then parceled in paper? So, though it was packed properly, still those Naikar people used to think that if they will touch anything touched by pariahs, they will also be polluted. I felt so provoked and angry that I wanted to go and touch those rushed vadais myself straight away. And then she was so angry that she wanted to run, go and touch the vadai herself. Why should we fetch and carry these people? I wonder. So she was just she was just bothered why they have to work for those people, why the pariahs have to work for the rich people. Such an eminent is high. Okay, such an eminent elder of ours goes off meekly to the shops to fetch snacks and hands them over reverently with respect. Bowing and shrinking. Shrinking is when they are, making their body smaller. To this fellow who just sits there and stuffs them into his mouth, and she was furious about this incident. Now that incident was no more fun for her. So the thought of it infuriated me. So she was so angry at this thought. How was it that these fellow thought so much of themselves? Now she was thinking that they were so full of themselves, and now she was questioning to herself, was it because they had scrapped 4 coins together? What did it mean when they called us pariah? So now she is thinking, what does it mean when they call us pariah? Had the name become that obscene? Obscene means offensive. Okay. But we too are human beings. Our people should never run these petty errands for these fellows. Now she is thinking that our people should never do any task for those Nikers. We should work in their fields. We should work in their fields, take home our wages, and leave at leave it at that. So she's thinking, okay, that's okay that we work in the field. So we should work in the field, collect the grains, and keep at home and just leave the task for themselves to do. So it was the first experience. Now second experience is both my grandmothers worked as servants for Niker families. In the case of one of them, when she was working in the fields, even tiny children born the other day would call her by her name and order her about just because they belong to the Niker caste. So she hated this also, that if her own grandmother was working somewhere in Niker family, so in the Niker family she wasn't given respect properly. Okay, even the little one, the most little one, maybe then here she is saying here that most little one, even the child was born the other day, would when the child would learn to speak, the child would call her own grandmother by name. So it was just discrimination, right, on the basis of caste. And this grandmother, like all the other laborers, would call the little boy Ayya, master. And that grandmother would also call that little creature as master. and run about to his and run about to do his bidding. Bidding means commands, and she would run after to complete the commands given by the little kids. And then the author says it was shameful to see them do this, and she didn't like that her grandmother had to do that. Even the way they were given their drinking water was disquieting. Disquieting means the feeling when they are anxious and worried that something bad is happening. So the way in which they were offered water, that was also not satisfying. And what was the way is described here? The Niger women would pour out the water from a height of 4 feet, while Patti here is the word used for grandmother. So while Patti and the others received and drank it with cupped hands held to their mouths, and the narrator says, I always felt terrible when I watched this. She didn't like it at all that the Niger family women were offering water in such a way from a distance. My other patti was the same. As soon as dawn broke, she would go to the Niger houses, and now she is talking about her another grandmother. As soon as what will happen, as soon as dawn broke, she would go to the Niger houses, sweep out the cowshed, collect up the dung and dirt, and then bring home the leftover rice and curry from the previous evening. Not the food which was cooked the same day, but the stale food, the food which was cooked previous day and it was the leftover. And for some reason she would behave as if she had been handed the nectar of the gods. Nectar is the divine drink, and she would behave, her grandmother would behave as if she have got some nectars. It was a long time before I realized that Patti was bringing home the unwanted food that the Nikers were ready to throw away. And after a long time, the narrator realized that her grandmother was bringing unwanted food which was not wanted at Niker's family. They were ready to throw, so that is why the Patti, because they were poor, right? So they were poor, so this is how they used to feed their children. So one day I went with Patti to the Niger house after she had finished all her filthy chores, shabby chores, small works. Okay. Patti placed the vessel that she had brought with her by the side of the drain. Okay, so nearby the drain, she has put her own vessel which she had taken from her home. The Niker lady came out with her leftovers, leaned out from some distance, and tipped them into Patti's vessel and went away. She kept the food, she poured the food from a distance so that both the vessels could not touch each other. Okay. Her vessel, it seemed, must not touch Patti's. It would be polluted. If it touches, it would be polluted. Sometime later, I said to Patti she should not lay herself upon to such behavior. It was ugly to see, and she didn't like that her grandmother should accept this kind of behavior. So she told her grandmother also, you should not accept this kind of behavior. What Patti said to me in return was this, and what her grandmother replied, see, these people are the Maharajas who feed us our rice. So these people are, Maharajas, they feed us our food. Without them, how will we survive? Now she says, if they are not there, we wouldn't be able to survive for a long time. Haven't they been upper caste from generation to generation, and haven't we been lower caste? Can we change this? Now, the grandmother asked the question. So, from generation to generation, they are in upper caste, and generation to generation, we are in lower caste. So, now the grandmother asked to the granddaughter, can we change this? My elder brother, who was studying at a university, came home for the holidays. Now she is saying that her elder brother, who was studying in a college and he was on holidays, so he came back to his village. He would often go to the library in our neighboring village in order to borrow books. So for the books, he used to go to the village library. He was on his way home one day, walking along the banks of the irrigation tank. One of the Niger men came up behind him. He thought my Annan looked unfamiliar, and so he asked, Who are you, Appa? Appa is a greeting word generally used for elder people. Okay, so one of the Nikers who did not recognize her brother, so he just came behind him and he asked him, right, who are you, Appa? What's your name? Then Annan told him his name. Immediately the other man asked, Thambi. So Thambi is here a word to address a brother. Okay. So he said, Thambi, on which street do you live? So he said, brother, on which street do you live? The point of this was, why did he ask about this? Because this answer would let him know the caste of Annan, right? So the point of this was that if he knew on which street we lived, he would know our caste too. Andan's reply was sharp like a slap in the face. So he gave a befitting reply. Befitting reply. And what was that? I'm a pariah from the Cherry Street. Then he stalked off as fast as he could. Stalked off. Okay, he gave the reply and he turned and he walked away from there as soon as it was possible for him. Niker was furious. Now at this sight, the Niker was very furious. He was angry. Why? Because he was, upper caste, and how could a lower caste person give him a tight reply and go away from him? So Niker was furious. He thought he had been humiliated. He asked someone else there, who is this fellow? Look at the way he talks. So he asked somebody else about him. So he got the reply. This older man explained who Annan, this other man explained who Annan was by mentioning our Patti. Oh, that is our Rakamma's grandson. So he got to know who was that boy. So the next day, when Patti went to work, the Niker spoke to her angrily. He was taking out his frustration. Okay. How dare your grandson talk to me so arrogantly? Patti managed to handle it by saying, see, Ayya. Okay, he was angry at Patti. How dare he could talk to him like that? So now grandmother replied, see, Ayya, he is an educated lad. Lad is a word used for young men. So he's an educated lad. These college boys will talk like that. So these college boys talk like that only. When Annan heard this, he just laughed. Okay, why? Because he made that person humiliated because they also provoke the lower caste people, right? So he just laughed. Apparently, it was just the same at the library. What happened one day in the library? See, they would look at the pariah lads from Cherry Street in a certain way with contempt, with no respect. Okay, so the students, those who used to go from the pariah street, they do not they used to give them no respect. Okay, once when Annan was signing out his books, he added his title MA, okay, Master of Arts. On a sudden impulse, push. On a sudden impulse, immediately the attendant brought him a stool to sit on and what's more, began addressing him as Sir. Why he was addressing him as Sir? Because he was talking to an educated person. Now he was no more uneducated, right? Annan told me all these things. So Annan, her elder brother, he told her all the things and then he added, because we are born into the pariah jati. Jati is caste. We are never given any honor or dignity or respect. That's why, because just because of their caste, they were not given any respect. We are stripped, covered. We are stripped of all that, but if we study and make progress, we can throw away these indignities. So, her brother was explaining how they can earn their dignities. So, study with care, learn all you can. If you are always ahead in your lessons, people will come to you of their own accord. If he was teaching her, if you are good at studies, everybody will definitely come to you because they would need help from you and attach themselves to you. Work hard and learn. The words that Anand spoke to me that day made a very deep impression on me, and I studied hard with all my breath and being in a frenzy almost. She was always in a panic way and just studying and studying and studying hard. As Annan had urged, I stood first in my class, and because of that, many people became my friends. Okay, because just because she was good at studies, she earned many friends. Okay, so let's wait here. Let's meet in the next video with second part of the lesson. Okay.